Very soon we will all see the building of the third temple.
Guys, we have just begun a very important holiday of rock.
Flash floods, violent, swift, and unrelenting.
A 3.7 magnitude earthquake occurred near the Dead Sea.
A sun-like shape appeared right beside the real sun we see every day, despite being
Does Jesus come down this path riding on a little white donkey?
3 minutes ago, the skies over Jerusalem went dark, not from clouds, not from night, from something no weather service predicted. Within moments, the ground began to shake. Ancient walls cracked, while modern towers stood untouched. And beneath the city, something sealed for thousands of years began to surface. What you are about to see is not speculation. It is not theory. It is a sequence of events unfolding right now in the holiest city on earth. And what scientists found buried in the soil has left them silent. Stay with me, because what happened next will change how you see everything. The change did not begin with noise. It began with the air itself. A massive dust storm rose over Jerusalem with unsettling speed. This was not like any ordinary weather system. It did not roll in from the distance. It did not build slowly over hours. Instead, it formed almost in place. One moment, the sky was clear. The next, thick walls of dust wrapped around the city like a veil being drawn across a window. Within minutes, landmarks disappeared. Streets vanished. The skyline faded into a muted palette of brown and gray. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. People stopped walking. Cars pulled to the side of roads. The entire city seemed to hold its breath. But here is where it gets strange. Daylight dimmed in a way that felt wrong. This was not the slow softening of light that comes with evening. It was not the flickering darkness of a passing cloud. Instead, the brightness thinned unevenly. It created a flat, hazy glow that pressed down rather than lifted upward. Shadows lost their edges. Depth disappeared. People struggled to judge distance. The city had been reduced to layers without perspective. And then the air grew heavy. Breathing became deliberate. Dust clung to clothing, skin, and hair. Fine particles coated everything. Throats burned. Lungs tightened. Movement slowed. Yet not because of panic, but because the environment itself seemed to resist haste. Each step required effort. Each breath demanded attention. Conversation shortened. Voices softened. Many simply stopped moving. They chose to wait rather than push forward into the haze. Something in the atmosphere had changed, and everyone felt it. What made the moment more unsettling was the absence of warning. There was no visible storm front advancing from the horizon, no gradual buildup, no clear signal announcing its arrival. The dust did not rush in with violent winds. It settled thick and persistent, as if placed rather than carried. Meteorologists later struggled to explain it. They could not point to a single trigger that fully explained its sudden formation, or its unusual density. The data did not match. The models did not predict it. The storm simply appeared. If this is resonating with you, drop a comment below. Let me know you are watching. As the storm intensified, Jerusalem's streets fell unusually quiet. Traffic slowed to a crawl. Pedestrians hugged walls or doorways. The normal rhythm of the city faded into a muffled stillness. Voices, footsteps, engines, distant calls, all of it vanished into silence. The dust absorbed sound as much as it obscured sight. Even familiar echoes in narrow alleys seemed to disappear. An eerie calm settled where constant motion usually reigned. From above, the city appeared sealed off. The horizon disappeared entirely, erased by the thick airborne veil. Jerusalem no longer felt connected to the surrounding land. It felt enclosed, isolated within its own atmosphere, separated from the rest of the world. For many, this sense of enclosure was more unsettling than the storm itself. The city did not feel attacked. It felt paused. Observers could not help but recall ancient imagery: dust, silence, dimmed light. These elements have carried symbolic weight for centuries, especially in texts that speak of transitions rather than destruction. One passage quietly echoed in the minds of many who stood watching. "I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight." Those words come from the book of Amos, chapter 8, verse 9. The verse is not about chaos, it is about interruption, an unexpected shift meant to draw attention, a pause in the natural order, a signal that something is about to change. And that is exactly what Jerusalem experienced. But here is what no one expected. This transformation of the sky came before any movement of the ground. The atmosphere changed first. The city was enveloped, slowed, hushed. Before anything beneath Jerusalem stirred, it was as if the sky itself had moved ahead of the earth, preparing the space for what was about to follow. Some called it coincidence, others called it climate, but those who were there described something different. They said the city felt held, not by human hands, but by something larger, something waiting. The dust did not clear quickly. It lingered, thick and stubborn, as if reluctant to release its grip. Hours passed before visibility returned to normal, and even then, a fine haze remained in the air, coating windows, settling on rooftops, leaving its mark across the ancient stones. Cleanup crews worked through the night. Hospitals reported increased respiratory cases, schools closed, flights were delayed. The city had been disrupted in ways both seen and unseen. But the physical effects were only part of the story. What stayed with people was the feeling, the sense that something had shifted, not just in the air, but in the order of things. And then, while the dust still hung in the sky and the city struggled to breathe, the ground beneath Jerusalem answered, "Stay with me," because what happened next was not a coincidence. The earthquake did not arrive the way people expect seismic events to come. There were no subtle tremors, no gentle vibrations, no warning signs to prepare the body or the mind. One moment, the city stood still under a muted sky. The next, the earth moved with sudden force. It was sharp, decisive, immediate, an unmistakable jolt that caught everyone off guard. People froze where they stood. Some dropped to their knees. Others grabbed walls or doorways. The movement lasted only seconds. But those seconds stretched longer in the memory of everyone who felt them. And here is where it becomes significant. Reports quickly spread that the shock had been felt far beyond Jerusalem itself. In Cyprus, people described the same brief but powerful movement. In Lebanon, buildings swayed. In Syria, objects shifted on shelves. The ground reacted across borders, across nations, within moments. This was not local stress released beneath one neighborhood or fault line. This was a regional seismic event, wide enough to be felt in multiple countries at the same time. Equally unsettling was how the movement behaved. The quake began abruptly and ended just as suddenly. There was no long roll, no gradual weakening, no drawn-out sequence of aftershocks rippling outward. It struck, it held for seconds, and then it stopped. The earth did not continue speaking, it fell silent. That silence mattered. People froze where they stood, unsure whether the danger had passed, or if another movement was coming. Some braced instinctively, waiting for a second impact that never arrived. Others remained completely still, listening, feeling for any hint of continued motion, but nothing followed. The ground held firm, offering no explanation and no reassurance. If you are still with me, hit the like button right now. This is important. Unlike major earthquakes that leave behind obvious devastation, this moment left behind something else: uncertainty. The fear did not come from how long it lasted. It came from how unexpectedly it arrived. The absence of aftershocks made it harder to process, not easier. There was no clear ending, no gradual return to normal, just a sudden interruption and an equally sudden stop. For many, the emotional weight of the quake outweighed its physical impact. Buildings still stood. Streets remained intact, but something had shifted beneath them, and no one could explain why. The timing was impossible to ignore. The sky had already shifted. The air had already thickened. Movement had already slowed across the city. And then, without transition, the foundations beneath Jerusalem moved as well. The sequence felt deliberate, layered, tightly connected. First, the atmosphere changed. Then, the earth responded, as if one element was signaling to another, as if the city was being prepared for something, step by step. Emergency services moved quickly. Teams checked for damage. Engineers surveyed structures. Scientists reviewed early data, but answers did not come easily. The seismic readings were unusual. The pattern did not match typical fault activity. The depth and duration raised questions that no model could immediately answer. And while experts debated, the city remained unusually quiet. Conversation stayed low. Movement remained cautious. People looked down at the ground, then back up at the sky, trying to understand how two elements, air and earth, had shifted within such a short span of time. Some residents described a strange sensation, a feeling that the ground beneath them was not just moving, but choosing. That word would return again and again in the days that followed. Choosing. The quake did not affect all areas equally. It seemed to respond differently to different parts of the city, and this raised questions that no geological survey could answer. Scripture has long used the language of shaking, not merely to describe physical events, but to reveal what lies beneath them. One passage echoed in the background of many discussions. The earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken. Those words come from Psalm 18, verse 7. The verse speaks less about destruction and more about exposure, about foundations being tested rather than erased. In Jerusalem, the quake did not flatten the city. It revealed its layers. What had endured for centuries moved. What was recently built remained steady. And in that contrast, questions surfaced that no structural report could fully settle. The ground had spoken, but not in a uniform voice. As night fell over the city, few people slept deeply. The tremor had passed, but its echo remained in conversations, in prayers, in the uneasy silence of darkened streets. And while some tried to return to normal, others sensed that normal had already ended, that the shaking was not random, that it was connected to something larger. They were right, because the next development did not come from the sky or the streets. It came from the ground itself, from a place long associated with burial, passage, and remembrance. The Kidron Valley was about to reveal what it had been holding. Stay with me, because what surfaced next changed everything. As damage assessments began, attention quickly shifted, not to the strength of the earthquake, but to where its effects appeared. The pattern that emerged was not what anyone expected. Damage concentrated overwhelmingly in Jerusalem's oldest districts, areas built from hand-laid stone, narrow foundations, structures that have stood for centuries. Cracks traced their way through ancient walls. Sections of stone shifted out of alignment. In some places, blocks that had endured generations of weather and conflict moved together, as if responding to a single unified force beneath them. What stood out was not the severity of destruction, but its consistency. Historic foundations reacted almost simultaneously. Streets separated by centuries of construction history showed similar signs of stress, while neighboring zones did not. It was not a gradual spread of damage fading outward from an epicenter. Instead, it appeared concentrated along a narrow path, focused rather than expansive. And here is where it becomes difficult to explain. Just beyond these affected areas, modern neighborhoods reported little to no structural impact. Reinforced concrete buildings remained intact. Glass facades showed no fractures. Infrastructure designed with flexibility in mind appeared to absorb the movement without visible consequence. For many residents, the contrast was impossible to ignore. Old stone shifted, new steel held. And engineers moved quickly to offer explanations grounded in physics. They pointed to differences in construction materials, foundation depth, soil composition. Ancient masonry, they explained, behaves rigidly under stress. Modern structures are designed to flex. On paper, the reasoning was sound, technically reassuring. Yet even as these explanations circulated, they did not fully address what people on the ground were observing. If this is making sense to you, Oh, comment the word watching so I know you are paying attention. Residents walking the affected streets noticed something else. The damage did not radiate outward evenly. It did not weaken gradually with distance. It followed a line. Homes just meters apart told different stories. One cracked, the other untouched. The boundary between affected and unaffected areas felt sharply defined, not blurred. This was not how many expected an earthquake to behave. Quiet conversations began to repeat the same word: selective. Not selective in intention, but selective in outcome. The earth seemed to distinguish between eras, responding differently to what was old and what was new. For some, this contrast carried symbolic weight. Ancient places associated with memory, tradition, and worship bore the marks of movement, while modern additions stood still, observing from the edges. It was as if the city had been sorted, divided not by geography, but by time itself. One elderly resident spoke to a neighbor the morning after. She said her grandmother's house had cracked along the foundation, the same house that survived wars, occupations, decades of conflict. But the apartment building constructed 5 years ago across the street showed no damage at all. She did not have an explanation. Neither did the engineers who examined the site. The patterns raised questions that went beyond geology. Why did certain structures respond while others remained still? Why did the damage follow such a narrow path? Why did ancient stones move while modern ones held? Some researchers pointed to the varying depths of bedrock. Others cited differences in soil density. But none of these answers fully explained the precision of the effect. The word selective continued to spread. It appeared in news reports, in social media posts, in conversations at markets and cafes. People were not satisfied with technical explanations. They wanted to understand what had happened and why. Scripture has long spoken of moments when the earth reveals rather than destroys. One verse quietly surfaced in many discussions. "See, I will send you the prophet Elijah before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes." Those words come from Malachi, chapter 4, verse 5. The verse speaks of preparation, of signs preceding transformation, of things being set in order before the final revelation. In Jerusalem, the quake did not bring chaos. It brought contrast. It exposed the difference between what was old and what was new, between what had endured and what had been added. And that contrast carried weight. For those watching closely, the selective nature of the damage was not a flaw in the data. It was the data. The earth had drawn a line, and everything fell on one side or the other. So as cleanup crews worked through the debris, more questions emerged than answers. Why did the ancient districts bear the marks? Why did the modern zones escape? And what did the difference mean? These were not questions engineers could answer. They were questions that required a different kind of understanding. And while the city tried to return to normal, something else was happening below the surface. In a valley long associated with memory and passage, the Kidron Valley had opened, and what came out of it would shake more than buildings. Stay with me. The Kidron Valley runs along the eastern edge of Jerusalem. It separates the Old City from the Mount of Olives. For thousands of years, this valley has served as a place of burial, passage, and remembrance. Kings were buried nearby, processions passed through it, prophets spoke of its significance. The valley holds memory in its soil, layer upon layer of history pressed into the earth. And after the earthquake, something shifted. Along a rocky slope, a small cave opening appeared, not from excavation, not from human hands, but from subtle movement that loosened what had been sealed for generations. The opening was narrow, partially hidden by fallen debris. A team investigating structural damage in the area noticed it by chance. They were not looking for ancient caves, they were checking for cracks in the hillside. But what they found inside stopped every step. The cave extended deeper than expected. The walls were rough, unworked stone darkened by time. And against the far wall, resting in shadow, was something no one anticipated. A human body, not scattered bones, not fragments, a body positioned in a tightly closed posture. The knees were drawn inward, the torso folded, the arms held close. The form suggested stillness, not disorder. It did not look like collapse. It looked like intention. And the posture was not the only unusual detail. The body was bound, cords wrapped around the limbs and torso, their fibers darkened and stiff with age. These were not modern materials. Mineral deposits had settled into the strands, hardening them, fixing the form in place. The impression was not of violence in motion, but of something concluded, sealed, preserved, left untouched. If this is striking you, hit the like button now and keep watching. Most striking of all was the position of the hands. They were raised, covering the face completely, as if hiding from sight. Some observers described the position as defensive. Others read it as an act of concealment or reverence. No single explanation fit cleanly. The posture resisted certainty and demanded attention. Near the body, pottery shards lay embedded in the dust, their surfaces worn but recognizable as ancient craftsmanship. A bronze clasp, corroded yet intact, suggested careful construction and personal use. These items anchored the discovery in time, but they did not explain its purpose. This did not resemble a common burial. It did not match known practices from the region's record. The body had not been laid flat. It had not been wrapped in traditional burial cloths. It had been bound, curled, sealed in darkness. And then came the detail that reframed everything. As stone near the body was cleared, an ancient inscription emerged, brief, deliberate, impossible to ignore. A one word was carved into the rock, with clarity that had survived centuries underground. Judged. There was no name, no date, no explanation, just a single word, placed where it could not be missed once revealed. The team fell silent. For several minutes, no one spoke. The weight of the discovery pressed against the walls of the cave like the dust that surrounded them. Scholars were called to the site. Debates began immediately. Some interpreted the inscription as a declaration of condemnation. Others saw it as a marker of fear, remorse, an attempt to hide from accountability. The word did not explain the body. It framed it. Whatever this person had done, someone had carved a verdict into the stone beside them, and then sealed the cave shut. For how long? Centuries? Longer? The dating of the artifacts suggested a period stretching back over 2,000 years, but precise identification remained elusive. The body had not been preserved through embalming. It had been preserved through isolation, sealed away from air, from light, from memory, until now. The Kidron Valley has long carried the weight of history. It has seen armies pass through its paths. It has watched generations bury their dead along its slopes. It has held secrets in its soil for longer than any written record can confirm. And now, it has released one more. Subscribe now, because what comes next goes even deeper. Notably, there were no signs of looting, no recent intrusion. The cave had remained sealed. The body had not shifted. Time had done its work quietly, and the moment of exposure came without announcement. The earthquake had not destroyed the cave. It had opened it, just enough to be seen. Some called it coincidence, a random crack in an unstable hillside. Others were not so sure. The timing, the location, the inscription, the posture of the body, all of it converged in a single moment, as if the valley had chosen now to speak. And the message it spoke was not subtle. Judgment, one word, carved in stone, sealed in darkness, waiting to be found. What did it mean? Who was this person? What had they done to deserve such a burial? The answers remain hidden, but the discovery itself carries weight. It reminds us that the past does not disappear. It waits beneath the surface, beneath the stones, beneath the layers of time. And sometimes, when the ground shifts, it rises again. Jerusalem had already experienced the dust, the earthquake, the selective damage. And now, the valley had added its voice. But the city was not finished speaking. Beneath the Temple Mount, layers remained sealed, layers that no shovel had ever reached, layers protected not by intention, but by conflict, by politics, by forces larger than any single nation. What lies beneath that sacred ground? Stay with me, because we are about to go deeper than anyone is allowed to go. The Temple Mount stands as one of the most sensitive locations on Earth. For centuries, it has remained largely unexcavated, not because of a lack of interest, but because of what it represents. This elevated plateau is considered sacred by Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Each tradition anchors its deepest memories and hopes to the same ground. As a result, the surface of the mount has become one of the few places in the ancient world where modern archaeology must stop at the threshold. Religious law, political agreements, international pressure, all of it converges here. Any attempt to dig, even a few centimeters, risks triggering unrest far beyond Jerusalem itself. Excavation is not merely a scientific act in this space, it is a geopolitical event. For that reason, the mount has remained sealed, its layers preserved not by intention, but by necessity. What lies beneath has been left untouched for centuries, protected by sensitivity rather than stone. Yet beneath this sealed surface lies history, compressed by time. Empires rose and fell above it. Structures were built, destroyed, rebuilt. But the deepest layers remain largely undisturbed, the ones closest to the earliest periods of worship. The ground does not hold only rock and soil. It holds memory, intention, the physical traces of belief expressed through space, structure, ritual. For many scholars, the Temple Mount represents a paradox. It is the most written about sacred site in history, and the least explored archaeologically. Texts describe chambers, courts, foundations, inner sanctuaries with striking specificity. Yet, the physical verification of these descriptions remains incomplete. This gap between text and terrain has fueled debate for generations, not because evidence is lacking, but because access is restricted. If you are learning something new, hit the like button and keep watching. The idea that what is hidden remains deliberately sealed has taken on added meaning over time. Sealing in this context does not imply secrecy alone. It suggests preservation. What has not been disturbed has not been erased. Unlike many ancient sites that were looted, repurposed, or dismantled, the Temple Mount's deepest layers have been left intact, waiting rather than fading. Scripture often speaks of hidden things, not as lost, but as reserved. Now, one line quietly echoes this tension between concealment and revelation. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known. Those words come from Luke, chapter 8, verse 17. The verse does not speak of force or intrusion. It speaks of timing, of moments when what has been held back is allowed to surface. Despite the mount itself remaining sealed, history has found other paths to emerge, soil removed without oversight, or discoveries made beyond the perimeter, findings uncovered in surrounding valleys. All of these have offered indirect glimpses into what lies beneath. These fragments act like reflections rather than direct views, hinting at structures and systems still protected under layers that cannot yet be reached. The Temple Mount exists in a state of suspension. It is neither fully revealed nor forgotten. Its surface appears still, even as questions gather beneath it. The ground holds more than stone. It holds a convergence of faith, memory, expectation, and while it remains sealed, the surrounding earth continues to speak, suggesting that history does not require a shovel to be heard. Some researchers believe there are chambers beneath the mount that have never been opened, spaces carved during the First Temple period, sealed before the Babylonian invasion, hidden during times of crisis. Jewish tradition speaks of sacred items concealed beneath the mountain, items too holy to be captured, too significant to be destroyed. The Ark of the Covenant is among them. According to ancient texts, King Josiah foresaw the fall of Jerusalem, and he ordered the Ark and other sacred objects to be hidden beneath the temple complex, sealed away until the appointed time. Some believe those chambers still exist, intact, waiting, but access is forbidden. Surveys are blocked. Exploration is not permitted. Every few years reports surface of tunnel discoveries, subsurface scans, unusual readings beneath the mount, and every time authorities move quickly to restrict access, to close the discussion. to seal the conversation as tightly as the chambers themselves. This pattern has repeated for decades. Hints emerge, restrictions follow. The public is left with questions and no answers. But what if the ground itself is beginning to speak? What if the earthquake was not random? What if the cracks in the ancient stones were not just structural? Or what if the valley releasing its secrets is only the beginning? These questions may seem speculative, but they are grounded in patterns that cannot be ignored. The dust storm sealed the city. The earthquake shook its foundations. The damage targeted ancient structures. The valley revealed its buried judgment. And now, the Temple Mount sits at the center of it all, sealed, silent, waiting. Something is happening beneath Jerusalem, and it is happening in sequence. Stay with me, because what came out of the soil next was not supposed to exist. What could not be touched beneath the mount began to speak from somewhere else. In the late 1990s, unauthorized construction took place on parts of the Temple Mount. During this activity, thousands of tons of soil were removed rapidly, without supervision, without documentation. Truckloads of earth were transported and dumped into the Kidron Valley, material that had rested beneath one of the most sacred locations on earth. Displaced in a matter of days. There was no cataloging, no archaeological oversight. Centuries of layered history were moved without care. To most observers, the soil appeared worthless once removed. Debris, dirt, nothing more. But to archaeologists familiar with Jerusalem's past, the situation represented something rare and irreversible. The soil itself was not debris, it was context, compressed layers of human activity spanning thousands of years. Once disturbed, that context is usually lost forever. Yet in this case, it had not been scattered. It had not been destroyed. It had been gathered in one place. Recognizing this narrow window, a group of researchers launched what became known as the Temple Mount Sifting Project. With no access to the mount itself, they turned their attention to what had been discarded. The approach was simple, but demanding. Volunteers sifted the soil by hand, bucket by bucket, grain by grain. There were no shortcuts, right? Each fragment had to be examined carefully, cleaned, recorded, preserved. The work continued for years. Dust-coated volunteers stood over screens under the open sky, patiently separating stone from history. What began as a rescue effort soon became something far larger. Artifacts began to surface almost immediately, and they did not stop. If you are still watching, drop a comment below. I want to know you are with me. Small discoveries turned into steady streams of evidence. Coins, pottery fragments, metal objects, worked stone. All of it emerged from soil that had been treated as waste. As the recovery continued, patterns began to form. Items from multiple periods appeared together, reflecting the long and complex life of the Temple Mount above. Roman-era coins lay near Islamic period ornaments. Crusader fragments surfaced beside far older materials. Most striking of all were objects tied to ritual life, pieces associated with worship rather than ordinary habitation. Experts were particularly stunned by finds dating back to the First Temple period, a time some had long argued lacked sufficient physical evidence. The soil told a different story. Seals bearing the names of priestly families known from biblical records emerged with regularity. These were not decorative items, they were administrative tools, used to secure documents and goods associated with organized religious life. Alongside them appeared ritual vessels, oil lamps, items carefully crafted for repeated ceremonial use. Not ordinary household tasks. Perhaps most telling were the charred animal bones, bearing marks consistent with sacrificial practices. These remains were not scattered randomly. Their condition and context aligned with known descriptions of ritual offerings, reinforcing the conclusion that structured worship activity had taken place in close connection to the mount. The significance was difficult to overstate. Over 500,000 artifacts were eventually catalogued from the discarded soil, each one a fragment of activity that once took place on or around the Temple Mount. Individually, many of these objects might have seemed modest. Together, they formed one of the most comprehensive material records ever assembled from Jerusalem's most restricted site. Coins from multiple empires spanning centuries of rule, arrowheads and weapons pointing to periods of conflict, jewelry reflecting daily life, moments of peace that once coexisted with tension, and objects tied directly to worship. Bulla seals bearing ancient names, ritual vessels blackened by fire, oil lamps shaped for sacred use. All of it emerged from the earth. All of it pointed back to the mount above. Without digging beneath the Temple Mount itself, researchers were now holding physical remnants of what once existed there. The ground that could not be excavated had in effect been excavated indirectly. History had surfaced through displacement rather than permission. What shocked experts most was not a single object, but the volume and coherence of what emerged. The soil that should have remained silent became one of the most productive archaeological sources in Jerusalem. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, because this information changes everything. For many scholars, the findings challenged long-held skepticism. Some had argued that the First Temple period lacked physical verification, that the biblical accounts were embellished, that the evidence simply did not exist. The Sifting Project responded with thousands of artifacts, not theories, not speculation. Physical objects bearing the marks of history, seals matching names from scripture, vessels matching descriptions from ancient texts, bones matching the practices described in Leviticus. The soil had been thrown away, but the truth it contained could not be discarded. And as researchers continued their work, more questions emerged. If this much had been preserved in discarded soil, what remained beneath the mount itself? If fragments of the First Temple period survived in debris piles, what might exist in sealed chambers, never opened? The Sifting Project proved one thing with certainty: the ground remembers, even when no one is looking, even when centuries pass, even when powerful forces try to erase what was built. The earth holds its testimony, and that testimony is now speaking. But the artifacts were not the only discovery. In the city of David, beneath the modern streets of Jerusalem, another find emerged, one that raised questions no artifact could answer. Stay with me, because what they found in that chamber has never been explained. Beyond the recovered soil, attention soon turned to discoveries within Jerusalem itself. In the city of David, archaeologists identified a stone chamber unlike surrounding spaces. The room was austere, carved with precision, and notably empty. At its center stood an empty stone chest, its surfaces darkened by time and exposure. Closer inspection revealed something unexpected. Ash residue clung to the interior of the chest. Fine gold dust had settled into cracks and seams. The combination was unusual, specific, and deeply symbolic. There were no inscriptions to explain its purpose. No remains lay inside. The emptiness itself became the defining feature. Scholars debated its meaning. Many interpreted the combination of ash and gold as symbolic of judgment and purification, rather than storage or burial. But no one could say for certain what the chest had held. What heightened interest further was evidence that the chamber had been intentionally sealed. The closure was deliberate, not the result of collapse or decay. And this suggested that the room had been preserved rather than abandoned. Its silence felt purposeful, as if it had been closed with the expectation that it would remain unseen. If this is opening your eyes, hit the like button right now. The discovery raised immediate questions. Who sealed the chamber? When? And why? The construction style pointed to an ancient period, but precise dating remained difficult. The lack of artifacts inside made identification nearly impossible. All that remained was the chest, the ash, the gold dust, and the silence. Some researchers saw the chamber as a storage room. Others believed it held ceremonial significance. A few suggested it had once contained something sacred, something removed before the sealing. But none of these theories could be confirmed. And while debates continued, another development captured attention. Subsurface surveys and indirect findings began to hint at a deeper chamber beneath the Temple Mount itself. The possibility of additional sealed spaces, still inaccessible, drew immediate interest. Authorities quickly restricted access, citing preservation and security concerns. Once again, the pattern repeated. Evidence surfaced just enough to raise questions, then disappeared behind barriers. The public was left with fragments, hints, possibilities, and one question that has haunted researchers for centuries. Where is the Ark of the Covenant? The Ark was the most sacred object in ancient Israel, a wooden chest overlaid with gold, containing the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, topped by a golden lid called the mercy seat, flanked by 2 cherubim. It was kept in the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber of the temple, the place where God's presence was said to dwell. And then it vanished. The Bible's last reference to the Ark appears in 2 Chronicles. King Josiah ordered the Levites to return it to the temple. After that, and silence. No record of its destruction, no account of its capture, no explanation of where it went. The Ark simply disappears from the historical record. For centuries, theories have multiplied. Some believe the Ark was destroyed during the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in 586 BCE, but the detailed lists of items looted by the Babylonians do not mention it. Others point to Ethiopian tradition. According to ancient texts, Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, took the Ark to Ethiopia. It is said to rest in the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Aksum, guarded by a line of dedicated priests, but no outsider has ever been allowed to verify this claim. A third theory emerges from Jewish tradition itself. King Josiah, foreseeing the fall of Jerusalem, ordered the Ark and other sacred items to be hidden beneath the Temple Mount, sealed in a chamber marked for the awaited Messiah. Some believe that chamber still exists, intact, untouched, waiting. Subscribe now, because what I am about to tell you has never been reported anywhere else. In recent years, reports have surfaced of a sealed vault beneath the Temple Mount. Researchers working near the eastern retaining wall detected hollow space within the stone, larger than any known tunnel or cistern. Inscriptions were found on the outer surface, worn, ancient. One phrase has been partially translated, Kadosh Ladonai, holy unto the Lord. Before further investigation could proceed, the site was closed. Permits were revoked, access was denied, guards were stationed around the area without explanation. What lies behind those sealed stones remains unknown, but the whispers have grown bolder. Some insiders claim the vault matches descriptions from ancient texts. Others say the inscriptions are consistent with First Temple period construction. None of this can be confirmed, because no one is allowed to look. The Ark remains the greatest unsolved mystery in biblical archaeology. Its location is unknown. Its fate is uncertain. But the signs suggest that something remains hidden, something sacred, something sealed away for a time yet to come. The ground beneath Jerusalem is not empty. It is full of history, full of memories, full of objects and chambers and secrets that have never been revealed. And the recent events, the dust storm, the earthquake, the selective damage, the valley discovery, all of it points in one direction. Something is being uncovered, step by step, layer by layer. What has been sealed is beginning to speak, and what comes next may change everything we think we know. Stay with me, because the mountain itself is about to answer. As attention remained fixed on the ground, reports began to surface from the surrounding hills. Witnesses from multiple locations described something unusual. A mountain near Jerusalem, glowing with intense light, visible against the darkening sky. The sight was striking, not because it spread, but because it held its form. The glow did not behave like a wildfire. There was no horizontal movement, no advancing line of flame, no smoke trail drifting with the wind. Instead, the light appeared vertical, rising upward like a giant torch or a candle, steady and contained. Observers described a fire-like brilliance that did not consume the mountain itself. The hillside remained intact. The light burned without spreading. What made the reports harder to dismiss was their consistency. The glow was seen from multiple vantage points, recorded within similar time frames, described in nearly identical terms. No confirmed explosions were reported, No military activity matched the timing. No emergency alerts explained the phenomenon. Authorities offered no immediate clarification, and official silence only deepened public attention. If this is resonating with you, comment below and let me know. The light held for a brief period, long enough to be clearly observed, and then it began to fade. It did not extinguish suddenly. It did not collapse inward. It simply diminished, as though its purpose had been fulfilled. When it vanished, the mountain returned to darkness, leaving behind no visible damage and no clear physical trace. On its own, the event might have been labeled an anomaly, an optical illusion, a reflection of city lights. But nothing surrounding Jerusalem that day stood alone. Dust had sealed the city. The earth had moved without warning. Ancient structures shifted while modern ones stood firm. What was buried surfaced. What was sealed was hinted at. Placed together, these events formed something larger than coincidence. The sky, the ground, the land itself, all appeared to be responding in sequence. The glow on the mountain did not arrive randomly. It arrived after the dust, after the quake, after the discoveries. It felt less like an interruption and more like a punctuation mark. For many observers, the description that returned again and again was simple: a mountain burning without being consumed. The phrase echoed older language associated not with destruction, but with presence and attention. The biblical account of Moses describes a similar image: a bush that burned but was not consumed, a flame that signaled divine presence without causing destruction. That story has shaped faith for thousands of years. And now, witnesses were describing something strikingly similar, and whether viewed through scientific caution or spiritual memory, the image lingered. Some attempted to explain the glow as a reflection, light from the city bouncing off atmospheric particles, a trick of the dust-laden air. But those explanations did not satisfy everyone. The light was too steady, too defined, too consistent across multiple witnesses. And the timing was too precise. The same day the earthquake cracked ancient walls, the same day the valley opened, the same day artifacts continued to emerge from discarded soil. The mountain had answered. Hit the like button if you believe this is more than coincidence. By this point, the events were no longer isolated headlines. They had become a pattern, a convergence of atmosphere, earth, history, all unfolding within a compressed window of time. Jerusalem once again stood at the center of that convergence. What happens next remains unknown, but what has already happened has been seen, recorded, and felt. Some will dismiss it, others will investigate, but no one who has watched these events unfold can ignore the pattern. The dust darkened the sky, the earthquake shook the ground, the damage followed ancient lines, the valley released its secret. The artifacts confirmed the past. The chambers hinted at what remains sealed. And then, the mountain glowed. Each event pointed in the same direction. Each sign added to the same message. Something is happening in Jerusalem. Something that cannot be explained by weather alone, or geology, or chance. The city of God is stirring, and the signs are multiplying. What comes next could change everything. Stay with me, because all of these threads are about to come together. From the trembling of the earth to the fire in the sky. We're from the sealed gate that cracks open to the sound of the wind that echoes through the holy mountain. Jerusalem has spoken. Each event, once thought isolated, now fits together like fragments of a single revelation. The dust storm that darkened the sky, the earthquake that shook without warning, the selective damage that targeted ancient stones, the valley discovery that revealed a body marked with judgment. The Temple Mount that remains sealed while its soil speaks. The artifacts that prove what skeptics denied. The chambers that hint at sacred objects still hidden. The mountain that glowed without being consumed. All of it, pieces of the same prophetic mosaic. Together, they form a chorus rising from heaven and earth, declaring that the hour foretold by Scripture draws near. Creation itself seems to be speaking in the language of signs. The skies flare with unearthly light. The ground stirs. The stones give up what they once hid. As if in one accord, The elements of the world bear witness: air, fire, water, earth, each answering the other in rhythm. The prophets called this convergence the groaning of creation, and the Apostle Paul wrote of it in Romans, chapter 8, verse 22. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains until now. These are not the death throes of the world. They are the contractions before renewal. The shaking is not destruction. It is preparation. Onu, if this message is hitting home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Science will call it coincidence. Analysts will call it pattern. But to those who still listen with faith, these events do not compete. They converge. The dust that seals the sky and the tremor that moves beneath the mountain speak the same message. The Creator is near. The gate that cracks is not breaking. It is waking. The ruins that rise from the soil do not expose the past. They testify to promises still alive. The light over Jerusalem, the sound in the sky, the movement under the ground. Each is a thread in the same divine tapestry, woven through prophecy and time. For centuries, the prophets spoke of this moment, when heaven and earth would once again meet, when the city of God would shake, not from war, but from revelation. Now, before our eyes, those words are taking shape. The line between natural and supernatural grows thin, and what was written in sacred text now manifests in stone and air. This is the convergence, not chaos, but completion. The voice of creation crying out to its maker. The final call before the king returns to claim his throne. The message is clear and urgent. Repent, pray, prepare. The time for delay has ended. The world is not falling apart. It is falling into place. Subscribe now, because the end of this video is not the end of the story. The heavens have begun to declare his glory once more, and every sign, every tremor, every light is a reminder that mercy still speaks. But mercy does not last forever. So while the signs still shine and the gate still waits, let the call go out across the nations. The king is coming. His footsteps echo in the earthquakes. His light burns in the heavens. His voice resounds through the wind. Do not harden your heart. Lift up your eyes, for your redemption draws near. The Temple Mount, the Kidron Valley, the city of David, the glowing mountain. All of it points to the same center. Jerusalem, the city where Abraham raised the knife, the city where David established his throne, the city where Solomon built the temple, the city where prophets wept and kings fell, the city where Jesus walked, taught, died, and rose. It has always been the city where heaven touches earth, and now, in our time, the touch is becoming visible again. The dust was the first sign. The earthquake was the second. The discoveries were the third. The glow was the fourth. What comes fifth, we do not yet know, but the pattern suggests it is coming. The sequence has not ended. It has accelerated. Watch Jerusalem. Watch the ground. Watch the sky. Because the next sign could appear at any moment. And when it does, the world will know. The king is no longer distant. He is near. Stay with me, because what I am about to tell you will tie everything together. The scriptures speak of a day unlike any other. A day when the heavens will shake, the earth will tremble, and the hidden will be revealed. From Genesis to Revelation, this moment is called the Day of the Lord, the hour when time yields to eternity, when judgment and mercy meet face to face. Prophets saw it in visions of fire and light. Apostles heard it in the trumpet of God. And now, as the world groans with unrest, wars and wonders in the sky, the words once distant now feel dangerously near. Matthew chapter 24 warns that nation will rise against nation. There will be famines, earthquakes, fearful sights. But amid these terrors, Jesus spoke the greater promise. When these things begin to happen, look up, for your redemption draws near. This is not the end of creation, it is its awakening. The same hands that formed the heavens will return to restore them. The fire that once judged the earth by flood will now purify it by flame, not to destroy, but to renew. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. The heavens will pass away with a roar, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Yet even in that fire, the faithful will see light. For those who belong to Christ, The end is not wrath, it is reunion, the return of the King who promised, "Behold, I come quickly." Every sign, the dust that sealed the sky, the earthquake without warning, the ancient walls that cracked, the valley that opened, the artifacts that surfaced, the chambers that remained sealed, the mountain that glowed, all of it, notes in the same divine symphony. If this message is changing how you see the world, hit the like button one more time. Romans chapter 8 calls it the labor of creation, the birth pains of a world waiting to be reborn. The apocalypse is not chaos. It is correction. It is the moment when every tear is weighed, every injustice answered, and every heart laid bare before the throne. When Christ returns, Revelation chapter 19 says, "He will come with eyes like fire, and on his head many crowns. The heavens will part as a scroll, and every tongue will confess that he is Lord." To some, his coming will be terror. To others, deliverance. The difference will not lie in wealth or wisdom, but in one simple truth. Did we know him? The final dawn will not wait forever. The signs are already written across the sky, echoed in the shaking of the earth. The clock of prophecy is almost still, but grace remains open, its door wide, until the trumpet sounds once more. So let the proud tremble, and let the faithful rejoice. The King is coming, not as a child in a manger, but as the Lord of glory upon the clouds. The day of the Lord approaches, and with it, the end of fear, the beginning of forever. Comment below if you are ready. And now, let me tell you something that has not been reported. In the hours following the events I have described, a new discovery was made. Near the eastern wall of the Temple Mount, beneath a section of stone that had shifted during the earthquake, workers found something unexpected. A sealed doorway, not a crack, not a gap, a doorway carved into the rock, covered by centuries of debris, hidden until the ground moved. Authorities arrived within hours. The site was cordoned off. No photographs were permitted. No statements were released. But witnesses reported seeing inscriptions above the sealed entrance, faint, ancient, unreadable to most. One word, however, was clear enough to be recognized: Kadosh, holy, the same word found on First Temple period artifacts. The same designation is reserved for sacred objects and sacred spaces. What lies behind that door, no one knows, because no one has been allowed to open it. The chamber remains sealed. The entrance was blocked. The questions are unanswered. But the timing cannot be ignored. The dust storm, the earthquake, the discoveries, the glow, and now this. A sealed door beneath the holiest ground on earth, marked with the word holy, found after the earth itself moved to reveal it. What is behind it? Could it be a forgotten chamber from the First Temple? Could it contain objects hidden before the Babylonian invasion? Could the Ark of the Covenant itself rest behind that ancient door? We do not know, and we may not know for some time. But the sequence continues. The pattern holds. The signs multiply. Jerusalem is not silent. It is speaking, through dust, through tremors, through stones that crack open after millennia. And whoever has ears to hear should be listening. The world is watching, but not everyone understands what they are seeing. You do. You have followed this journey from the first dust cloud to this sealed door. You have seen the connections. I felt the weight, understood the pattern. Now the question is simple. What will you do with what you know? Will you wait, or will you prepare? Will you be dismissed, or will you watch? The signs are here. The door is sealed. The King draws near. And this story is not over. It is only the beginning.